It seems like almost forever that the consumer has been able to purchase and own whatever media they want without the risk of it being taken away from them. The sad reality is that corporations are slowly moving consumers away from this model. They are leaning into a new rental type model of media sharing while phasing out physical media. You see it everywhere today, with streaming services for movies, TV shows, music, and even video games. Many people have been vocal in their disdain for this, and it's easy to see why. It's made it very difficult to find certain media, allowing it to potentially become lost media. Since the printing press made books widely available to the public, books were only released as physical hard copies that readers could go to the store and buy and own forever, with the exception for public archives, aka libraries. It was the same with music. Consumers would go out and buy physical copies of albums or songs they liked, whether it be on records, 8-track tapes, cassette tapes, or CDs.
Hope you guys like Weezer.
Movies and TV shows were similarly distributed on physical media ranging from VHS tapes, Betamax cassettes, Laserdiscs, DVDs, and Blu-ray discs. Video games have always been physically available, with physical releases being the main drive for gaming.
Whoa, hey guys, welcome to EB Games.
Call of Duty,
Advanced Warfare, Xbox One.
Copy that.
The shift away from ownership of media started all the way back in 1985 with the birth of the most famous video rental service in the United States, Blockbuster Video. Blockbuster offered a more affordable option to watching movies. It allowed consumers to rent licensed copies of movies on VHS tapes for a few days for viewing at home. Eventually, more services like this would pop up, most notably a little startup known as Netflix. Netflix started off as a DVD rental service in 1997 and debuted its subscription service in 1999. The thing they did differently from Blockbuster was that they had no due dates, late fees, or monthly rental limits. Netflix would later introduce streaming of movies and shows in 2007, partnering with brands like Microsoft and Blu-ray enabled Netflix videos to be streamed on Xbox 360 consoles and Blu-ray players. Original programming debuted in 2013 with shows like House of Cards, Hemlock Grove, Arrested Development, and Orange is the New Black. Books also moved away from physical media ownership, with ebooks becoming a new thing in the early 2000s. Thanks to Adobe's Acrobat ebook reader, readers were now able to read books on computers. This would allow users to add notes, add bookmarks, and visualize book covers in a personalized library. In 2007, ebooks would gain a surge in growth with the release of Amazon's Kindle e-reader device. This was a tablet that allowed users to browse, search for, and purchase ebooks to be able to read on the go whenever they wanted to.
Legal troubles over copyright infringement aren't slowing down Napster. The song swapping company is now in the top 50 list of most visited sites on the web, according to Mediametrics.
The rise of the internet created a rapid shift in music distribution in the early 2000s, with the music industry having to combat piracy through file-sharing services like Napster and LimeWire. The changes that followed introduced a new way for consumers to listen to music. The music industry moved music away from ownership models of physical media to subscription streaming services like Pandora and Spotify. Instead of listeners buying the music at an upfront cost, they can now pay for a subscription service to get access to an almost endless amount of music. Gone were the days of having to buy an entire album on CD or a record just for one song. Video games also got the digital distribution treatment in the early 2000s, with storefronts like Stardock selling PC titles for users to purchase and download. This would pave the way for services we have today like Steam, which is a digital storefront for purchasing and downloading games, as well as a social avenue for players to meet new people and play with friends. So with all this convenience in mind, why would this be a bad thing for consumers? Well, much of it has to do with licensing content. While Netflix has an enormous library of movies and TV shows available for streaming, it doesn't have the rights to stream every movie or TV show ever produced. They have to license each item in their catalog that wasn't produced by them. In the years since Netflix made streaming popular, there has been an explosion of streaming services made available. Each has their own limited libraries of content. There are so many options to choose from today because of rights holders running the streaming services now. This has also led to a push for more original content. This makes it harder and more expensive for people to find movies they want to watch, especially if it's not able to be found easily on physical media. We no longer live in an era where we can own what we want to watch, we can only stream what we want, and if it's not available on the streaming service you have, too bad. We didn't really get to see the consequences of this practice until 2022, with the Warner Bros. Discovery merge, which led to getting rid of a lot of shows on Max. Over 80 shows were removed from Max because of the merger. Some of the shows removed were Close Enough, Final Space, Mau Mau Heroes of Pure Heart, OKKO Let's Be Heroes, Summer Camp Island, Victor and Valentino, and various Sesame Street specials. The reason these shows are listed here is because these shows were never distributed physically, meaning that the shows are at risk of becoming lost media. This has caused fans of these shows to panic and torrent these shows illegally. This means that the only way to watch these shows now is to either hope that another streaming service has the rights to it, or watch it illegally online. Public trust in streaming services has declined after this merger, waking people up to the idea that consumers never know if their favorite show or movie will be available to watch if the service just decides to get rid of it.
Beep, beep. on, Chief. Did I just hit that ostrich?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah, he's fine. Keep going.
This doesn't just affect consumers, it sometimes impacts the creators of the media. There's the recently infamous case of the film Coyote vs. Acme. This is a Who Framed Roger Rabbit-esque feature-length film about Wile E. Coyote suing the fictitious Acme company. The entire film was filmed, edited, animated, and finished to completion. It was scheduled to be released on July 21st, 2023, when Warner Brothers removed the film from their release schedule and replaced it with the 2023 film Barbie. In November of 2023, it was announced by Warner Brothers Discovery that they would not release the film and would instead take an estimated $30 million tax write-off. Since then, the internet has been begging and pleading with Warner Brothers Discovery to release the film, along with the people who worked on it, most notably actor Will Forte, saying it was incredible, super funny throughout, visually stunning, sweet, sincere, and emotionally resonant in a very earned way. This film has become lost media and may never be released to the public. The only pieces of media we have from this film are a few screenshots of the film released by Eric Balza, a voice actor known for voicing Looney Tunes characters since 2018. This hasn't just affected the film industry though. The gaming industry has also been affected, with games being removed from digital storefronts forever becoming unplayable. When a consumer purchases a game, they are given a digital key, which is a code you type into the store's redeem page to get your copy of the game. Games that have been removed from storefronts may still have keys available for redemption, but are often sold at obscene prices over their original cost, making the games harder to access. Games like 2006's Prey and Fable 3 no longer have keys being made for the game, rendering the pre-existing keys to be worth over $100. At least with those games you can still buy the keys and play them, and for people that purchased them before they were removed from storefronts, they can still play the game. However, that's not always possible. In the case of Ubisoft's 2014 game The Crew, the fans of that game aren't so lucky. Ubisoft shut down the servers of the game in 2024, and with that, made the game entirely unplayable. Even people who purchased the game when it was originally released could no longer launch and run the game without access to the servers that had been shut down. This has led to a class action lawsuit by the YouTuber Accursed Farms. He's claiming that the shutdown of the servers for The Crew represents a quote gray area in video game consumer law that he wants to challenge. His argument is that since the game was sold in stores with a perpetual license and not a subscription, that it leaves the purchaser with nothing following the server shutdown.
I'll just say for non-gamers, a decent analogy for games as a service is like buying a car that you paid full price for, then later, usually a few years down the road, the dealership comes and repossesses your car, even though you paid it off. In any other industry, this would be theft. That's the simple version. The more accurate analogy would be you buy the car, but there's a line in the fine print saying they can destroy the car whenever they want, but they won't tell you when. Then sometime, usually a few years down the line, though not always, they send a signal to your car that melts down the whole thing into a lump, so it's completely unusable. Now you might think, doesn't that still sound illegal? Well, yeah, I think so. Some people confuse this with renting, since the practice is similar, except with renting, you're told up front a specified time duration when you can use something, and the prices usually reflect that.
If this case goes to court, it could set an important precedent with how digital licenses are handled in the future. Music thankfully hasn't succumbed to this fate quite yet, but it is getting there. Not every song has a physical release anymore, some are only released digitally, and with it being easier to distribute music on streaming platforms nowadays, the amount of music at risk of becoming lost media is at an all-time high. This has been seen with the case of Neil Young protesting against Spotify by removing all of his music from the platform in 2022.
Spotify has a podcast where they're putting out information about a vaccine. You are on Spotify. You make a lot of money off of Spotify because your music is one of the most streamed artists of all time. You say, wait a second, Spotify, do not put shows on that put out false information about the COVID vaccine. But you didn't stop there. You took your music off of Spotify.
Howard, I woke up one morning and I heard somebody saying there was some scientists were saying something about COVID, or some doctors, and they were saying something about COVID and how many people were dying in the hospitals, and misinformation, and these people are with these people who are dying. I mean, this is their life. So these people were distressed by the fact that Spotify was doing this misinformation with some show they had, and I listened to it, and they purposely is saying this stuff that he knows isn't true about COVID, and people are dying, you know. I just called up my management and said, we're out of there.
The music has since been reinstated, but the fact that it was easy to pull it all from Spotify shows how easily consumers can lose access to certain content they like if the artist or streaming service decides to take it down. With the looming death of physical media threatening consumers day by day, it's understandable some consumers are worried about the future of it. Hell, Best Buy stopped selling Blu-rays in 2024, so it's only a matter of time before other stores do the same, rendering the Blu-ray to either become non-existent or only available through online markets. There has been some pushback to this process, however, with sites like the Internet Archive and GOG, or Good Old Games, archiving movies, TV shows, music, video games, and books that are seemingly lost to time or not available through legal means. There have been some hiccups in this with lawsuits like Hachette versus Internet Archive. The Internet Archive has a library function where users can rent books for 2 weeks or less. 4 book publishers sued the Internet Archive, saying that its library function violates their copyrights, also alleging that the library model has cost them millions of dollars. This isn't true, however, since libraries have paid the publishers billions for the physical copies of books and are investing in digitizing the books to preserve them. It seems like these corporations are heavily against preservation of media. The reason is really easy to see though, it's all a financial thing. These companies don't want to spend the money to distribute something that a small niche group of people want, so instead of allowing the small group to preserve the media and make it more accessible, they sue the people in charge of the preservation of their product without offering to sell it in the future. This has also been an issue in the gaming industry, with old games being harder to find for old consoles. Great games like Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill 2, and Conker's Bad Fur Day are being sold for hundreds of dollars, making these games a pipe dream for most players to buy. However, there is a way that gamers can play these games without having to buy the now expensive hardware and games to play them. There's something called a software emulator. Gamers can now access all of these old games for free and play them on their PCs. Now, these are in a legal gray area, but from a consumer standpoint, they're far better than spending hundreds of dollars to watch a funny video game mascot get drunk or solve the riddle of James Sunderland's missing dead wife. Video game companies have been forever at war with emulators, but the public consensus is that if the companies don't want people to emulate their old games, they should just make their old games easier to access. Nintendo doesn't sell their old N64 games anymore, you can only buy them secondhand. Now, you can play some of their old games through an online catalog subscription service that Nintendo offers, but not all of their N64 games are on there yet, making it useless to some people. Aside from the impact to an individual and the loss they may suffer from not being able to access specific media, there is a potential societal cost as well. All of these forms of entertainment, books, movies, TV shows, and video games are representative snapshots in time of our culture. They will inform future generations of who we were as a people, how we behaved, how we liked to be entertained, and what we believed was important. Sure, there are intellectual property rights that should be observed, but it's also important that society not sit idly by and let this art become lost media. It seems that ownership of media is a dying concept. With streaming services taking over the markets of film, music, and gaming, there's no way of knowing how long consumers have access to their favorite media. For this reason, it's important that we preserve the physical media we have and push for new physical media to be made, or require that perpetual licenses actually be perpetual as long as the selling company exists. Because if this trend continues, consumers will have to get used to the idea that they will own nothing and be happy with it.